Hi, this is Shelby Slay from Scarlet Sky Designs, and today we're going to be taking a look at our Stars and Stitches Quick Finish Frame Self-Finishing Bag Tag Kit. All right, let's get started. So, in your little kit right here, there's a couple of different items included. You have your quick finish frame, your acrylic finishing template, and a hardware clip. For this one in particular, because it's a bag tag, we have included that hardware clip for you. There are other ways that you could use this, but in this particular instance, we're going to be using it as a bag tag, scissor fob, project bag, pull, lots of different things, like a zipper pull. So there's lots that you can do with this, but let's go ahead on and take a look at everything included. All right. So inside the bag, you can see that we have our finishing template that's in here. This is going to help us cut everything correctly. We have our frames, and then we have our hardware clip. For these different ones, you can see that there's a protective paper that's on top of them. That can easily be removed by using your needle to start pulling up that paper. You can use a fingernail, or one of the things that I like to use is I like to use the end of one of my needle threaders to get right under that paper right there, pull it up, and then I can just quickly pull that off of there. Okay, so before we get started with our quick finish frames, we have a variety of different sizes for these, and they also come in a bag tag option and an ornament option. For this particular one, we are using our bag tag option, and it is the size of a 1.25 inch opening. There are other opening sizes available, but for this particular one, we wanted a 1.25 inch because of the pattern that we're going to be finishing. So this pattern is our Stars and Stitches Firecracker Mini. For this particular pattern, the colors that we are using, or that we did use to stitch it, are DMC 04, 312, 321, 3820, and B5200. You can see that for this particular one, you have a 14 count of 1.1 inches, 16 count, the sizing is 0.9 by 0.9, 18 count, 0.8 by 0.8. And for this particular one, we used it on a 14 count vintage country mocha that was stitched over using 2 strands over 1. And then I'm going to finish it on our quick finish frame. All right, so let's get started with this. Now, I have some pieces that have already been pulled off, so let's take a look at those. All right. Now this should be a little bit easier for you all to see. As you can see, our template right there. Let's see if you can see it on the side. Oh, my hands were a little warm. Now you can see it. So right there in the middle, it shows you that it's a 1.5 inch template, and there's an exact center cutout in there. So when we go to finish this, we can put that center spot directly on our center stitch. Now for this particular one, I know that my center stitch is going to be a red stitch right here in the middle, and it's going to be next to a white, blue, red, red, white. So in just a second, when we go to finish, I'll be right there in that spot. So that's where we will put our hole. So let's go ahead on and take a look at this. So we have the top portion of our frame. We have the bottom portion of our frame. And then once we get everything cut out, the pattern is going to sit right in there. We are going to put the top portion on top of that, glue everything down, and then we will finish it using clips. And then once it's dry, we can add our hardware clip onto that. So let's go ahead on and get started with this. As you can see, I was messing around with colors. So this is what I started with from my colors, and I decided to go with these colors instead for this pattern. So let's go ahead on, now that it's stitched, let's get it finished. So as we talked about a little while ago, we talked about how my center stitch was this red X right here in 321. So I'm going to put my center hole directly on that spot. Now to hold it in place, I can just put my finger right over that. Now there's a couple of different things that you can do here. There's a variety of different pins that you can use. For instance, I have one of the Dritz disappearing ink. You could use a friction pin, a friction marker. There's a couple of different options. You could use a number 2 pencil, lots of different things that you could use to mark out that center space. For this one in particular, I'm going to go ahead on and use my friction ink. The one thing that I will tell you though about the friction ink, especially with the markers, is if you live in a cold climate, when things get cold again, every once in a while, if your lines are going to be shown on something that you finish in a cold climate, when it gets cold again, every once in a while, these lines will show. For this particular pattern, when we finish it, it will be covered by our frame, so we don't have to worry about that happening. Plus, I live in Texas and it doesn't really get cold here. So let's go ahead on. We've got our center spot. Let's go ahead on and mark where we are going to cut in just a second. These are really light on this side. I've used this marker quite a bit, so my lines are a little light, but that's okay. We'll see them in just a minute, and we're gonna cut them down anyway. So let's go ahead on. As you can see, I'm gonna put my template over to the side right there. You can see my lines. Now that's gonna give me my guide for where I want to cut. Now, for cutting, your option, you know, your choice in terms of how you wanna do this. I'm just using a simple pair of my foldable scissors to cut. I like to cut just inside those lines. You could cut directly on it. Now, remember, we've got extra space overhanging from where we're gonna go. So if you're off by just a little bit, like I'm rushing a little bit here, I'm not quite as tidy as I would normally be, it's not gonna matter so much because we're gonna glue all that down in just a second. So let's go ahead on, let's get these cuts done. Let me get this one right here. All right, so we've got our piece cut out. And what we're going to do now, we're gonna put our template just over the top right there for our frame so we can take a look at it. Now, for this particular one, what you might wanna do beforehand is you can go through and you can snip your threads. My back here is a little bit messy, but I'm just gonna leave mine as they are, and I'm gonna go ahead on in just a second. Now, what I want to do for this particular one, you want your stars pointed up. Now, if you choose, you could always turn it another way. That's your choice. But this frame, I like it with my stars pointing up. One other thing you can do after you pull off your paper, you can go back through and just clean off your templates too. I forgot to do that a second ago. I was too worried about doing my cutting. So what we're gonna go ahead on and do is, now that we've got that cut out, we're gonna go in here and we're gonna perfectly position our piece right over the top of this. So remember, we knew our spot of where that was right there, right? So now we can go in and we can look at this and see our positioning based on that. Now we could go through and we could mark here on the back side if you want to. I trust myself enough to try and figure this out. So I'm gonna go right here. And the good thing, what I like to use is I like to use like a clear Gorilla Glue, E6000, any of those, because you still have time if things look a little bit off. You can go through and you can move your piece around a little bit if you notice that you're off a little bit. So what I'm gonna do right here, now this is your choice if you want to glue on to your fabric or if you want to do onto your frame. What I'm gonna do for this particular one though, because I wanna set mine on the back side of the frame first, because then what I'm gonna do once I set on there, I'm gonna put a little extra glue on the back of my piece before I glue everything down onto my back frame. So what I'm gonna do right here is I'm just gonna go through and lightly brush a little bit of glue across on my frame. Again, you can do this on the fabric instead if you want to, okay? But I just lightly brushed a little bit of glue right on that frame. Sorry about that, you guys. We had a small technical difficulty there. For any of you that are lucky enough to own cats, well, our dear sweet little Murphy just came in and made a mess of everything while I was in the middle of trying to do this. So I apologize. Let's start this again. So as you can see, I've got my thin little bit of glue right there. The one thing you want to do in between is just kind of, if you do this, rub your finger around those edges to make sure you don't have any on your front side. Again, make sure your stars are pointing up when you come in here in just a second. As you can see, Murphy made a little bit of a mess for me. He kind of spilled some glue everywhere while I was in the middle of doing that. So let me go ahead on. I'm gonna set my piece lightly in here on those edges for the second time. Let's see if we can do this without any cat interruptions. Now, once I turn it around, now I've got the chance where I can just pull this piece down just a little bit. I can see that I'm off by just a little. I can still kind of move some things around, adjust as needed. Make sure everything looks like I want it to. And then now when I've got it at that point, now is when I'm going to go back over here. Now in the middle of this piece, remember I've got little stars around those edges. So I don't want to get glue on those spots. So I'm just going to glue lightly in those little areas, right in there, avoiding those open stars, just like this. Fun fact, if your cat does actually get glue on a stitched piece, if you lightly brush those areas, it seems like, at least with the clear Gorilla Glue, if you lightly brush those areas with a Q-tip and some nail polish remover, it seems to get it out for the most part. So I went ahead and put my little glue dots kind of on the side. Now, more so in this middle area right here, I am going to put a little glue in there to make sure that my cross-stitched piece sticks, avoiding those outer areas where my stars are going to sit. So I'm going to go ahead on, get that set right there. Now, when I am first putting this all together, right, because I am using movable glue right now. One of the things now, if I was using, you know, something like, what's it called, a glue gun, you know, I wouldn't need to do this because it's going to stick a little bit more, a little bit faster, you know, and that's your call if you want to use a glue gun. I personally like the availability to move things around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around just with some fabric clips, and I'm going to stick those just kind of around my edges. And then once I have those on there, that gives a chance for everything to stick down and dry. And I can still move everything just a little bit as I want to. I kind of keep fabric clips around everywhere. You'll notice that, you know, in some of our freebies, one of the things that I like to put in there a lot of times is fabric clips or tape measures or thread organizers, different things like that. But I like to put fabric clips in there a lot because I use them a lot for finishing, and I reference them a lot in my finishing. So I'm just going to go around kind of to those edges. I'm going to make sure that everything is lined up. Look, I still even have a little bit of Murphy hair right there. Let's get those cleaned off. Now, once this dries, I'll go back through, clean my fingerprints off, everything like that. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead on. I like to probably over clip everything once I get it all set in there, lined up, everything looks good. If you happen to see any glue seepage, just go ahead on and clean that off just on those sides while you're holding everything in there. Check your edges. Now I'm going to go ahead on and let this glue. Once it's glued though, I'm going to go ahead on and take my hardware and then I'll clip it right into there, and then my bag tag, scissor fob, zipper pull, whatever it is that you want to use it for is set and ready to go. All right, I hope you enjoy our stars and stitches bag tag frame. And if you have any questions, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me close this glue up before Murphy comes back. All right, have a great day. We'll see you later.